The days after Daniel's visit were quiet, too quiet. But not the kind of silence I had grown used to with my husband. No, this silence was heavy, charged, almost alive. It was the silence of knowing. I couldn't stop thinking about what Daniel had said and what he had done. The touch of his hand on mine, his eyes burning with words he barely allowed himself to say, his confession that I deserved more than the silence I had been drowning in. It wasn't supposed to matter. He was just my husband's friend. He was supposed to fix a leak and leave. That should have been the end. But at WSN single quotes T. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be him. Every time I walked into the kitchen, I saw him kneeling under the sink, his strong hands working, his quiet voice explaining what needed to be done. And every night, when my husband collapsed into bed, exhausted, barely glancing at me, I thought about the difference. And that difference made my heart ache. One evening, about a week later, the storm came. The rain was relentless, hammering against the windows, the thunder rolling in deep waves that rattled the glass. The roof groaned under the weight of it, and I noticed it almost immediately, the drip in the living room ceiling. A new leak. I should have called a repair service. I should have left it. But instead, without even thinking, I dialed. "Daniel, storm's hitting you too?" he asked, his voice rough, like I had woken him. "There's a leak in the ceiling," I admitted, hugging my arms around myself. It's pretty bad." There was a pause. Then quietly, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I should have told him no. I should have insisted he stay home, safe. But I didn't single quotes T. And 20 minutes later, he was at my door, rain-soaked, hair plastered to his forehead, toolbox in hand. "Show me," he said simply. I led him into the living room, pointing to the dark, spreading patch on the ceiling where water was dripping onto the floor. He set his things down, looking up with a grim expression. "I'll need to check the attic." I fetched him a towel, but when I handed it to him, our fingers brushed again. Just like last time, that spark shot through me. Impossible to ignore. My breath caught, and when I met his eyes, I saw the same storm reflected there, not the one outside, but the one between us. He climbed into the attic, his boots thudding above, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the shadows. I waited below, wringing my hands, trying to steady my thoughts. When he finally came down, his shirt clung damply to him from the humidity, his arms streaked with dust. "It's a broken tile. I patched it as best I could for now, but it'll need a proper fix when the rain stops." I nodded, too aware of how close he was standing. "You should change," I murmured, gesturing to his wet clothes. "You'll catch a cold." "I'm fine." "You're not," I insisted, softer this time. "Wait here. I'll grab something." I went upstairs, rummaging through the dresser until I found one of my husband's old t-shirts and sweatpants. I hesitated, staring at them. Then, slowly I carried them down. "Here," I said, holding them out. He looked at the clothes, then at me. His jaw tightened. "You sure?" I nodded. He took them, brushing past me to the bathroom. When he emerged a few minutes later, his damp hair curling slightly, the shirt clinging to his frame, I felt something dangerous stir in me, something I had been denying. We sat in the living room, the storm raging outside, the sound of rain a relentless drumbeat. I made tea, setting the mugs between us, but neither of us touched them. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. Finally, he spoke. "I shouldn't have come," I swallowed. "But you did." His eyes met mine, intense. "Because I can't stay away." My heart stopped. Literally, for a moment, it felt like the world tilted. like the air was sucked from my lungs. His words hit harder than the thunder outside. I wanted to deny it, to push him back into the safe place where he belonged, my husband's friend, nothing more. But I couldn't, because in that moment I realized the truth. I didn't want him to stay away, Daniel, I whispered, my voice trembling. He shook his head, moving closer, his hand reaching out as though he couldn't stop himself. His fingers brushed against my cheek, tentative, trembling, but the heat of his touch burned through me. "You don't know what you're doing to me," he said, his voice raw, almost breaking. I should have stopped him. I should have pushed his hand away. But instead, I leaned into it, my eyes fluttering shut as tears pricked at the corners. Because for the first time in so long I felt wanted. I felt alive. The storm raged on, but inside the house, the loudest storm was the one between us. And in that moment, when his lips hovered inches from mine, when my entire body trembled with the weight of temptation, my heart truly did stop. Because I knew that if I let this happen, nothing would ever be the same again. The front door opened. "Babe, you home?" My husband's voice. We sprang apart, the spell shattering instantly. Daniel's eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. He grabbed his toolbox, muttering under his breath. I'll call you tomorrow about the roof," he said quickly, his voice rough, broken, and before I could even process it, he was gone, slipping out the back door. Just as my husband walked into the living room, my husband glanced around, frowning at the patched ceiling, the tea mugs on the table. "What's this? Did Daniel come by again?" I forced my lips into a smile, though my heart was still racing, though my breath still caught in my chest. "Yeah," I whispered. "Dependable, like always." But inside, everything was different. Because what Daniel had done, his touch, his confession, his almost kiss had made my heart stop. And now, I knew there was no going back. When Daniel fixed the faucet and sat with me over coffee, I thought that was the end of it. A small favor, a friendly gesture, nothing more. But what he did next, subtle, deliberate, and impossible to ignore, shifted something inside me. Something I didn't realize had been waiting to stir. The afternoon light filtered through the blinds, painting warm stripes across his face. His eyes caught the glow, a deep shade of brown that seemed almost too gentle for a man with such strong hands. He leaned back in the chair, one arm stretched casually along the side, his fingers grazing the wood as though he owned the space. "You?" "No," he said quietly, his voice dropping lower. "I don't mind coming by like this. In fact, it's nice. Nice." I repeated, forcing a small laugh. "You mean fixing leaky faucets is nice?" He tilted his head, his lips curving, into the kind of smile that carried weight. "Not the faucet. Being here, talking to you." My stomach tightened. The words hung between us, bold and uninvited. For a second, I thought I had misheard him, that the way he looked at me, steady and unflinching, told me I hadn't. I gripped my coffee cup a little tighter. "Daniel," I began, searching for the right thing to say, something light that would push us back into safe territory. But my voice betrayed me, too soft, too unsure. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his eyes locked onto mine. "I probably shouldn't say this. He's my friend, your husband. I know the lines. But..." His breath caught, and he shook his head, as though fighting himself. "You deserve more than silence when you're sitting in this house alone, every day." My heart thudded. "Silence. You know what I mean." His gaze flickered, scanning my face like he was memorizing it. "He's never here. He doesn't see it. But I do. You've got this light in you, and it's wasting away waiting for him to notice. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. Daniel, this isn't. But he cut me off, not with words, but with the gentlest brush of his hand over mine. It was nothing at first, just his fingers grazing my knuckles. But it was enough. Enough to make me feel the electricity I'd been starving for. Enough to make me realize how long it had been since anyone had touched me with intention, with care. I should have pulled away. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to do it. But instead, I froze, caught in the gravity of that small, deliberate act. He didn't push. He just let his hand rest there, warm and steady, waiting for me to decide. And in that waiting, I felt seen. Not as someone's wife, not as someone waiting at home, but as a woman. I pulled back first, setting my coffee cup down harder than I meant to. Daniel, this isn't right. He's your friend. He trusts you. Daniel leaned back, running a hand through his hair, frustration flickering in his eyes. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't told myself to just stay away? He laughed bitterly, but it wasn't cruel. It was pained. I shouldn't have come today. Not because of the leak, but because I knew I wouldn't be able to keep pretending. My breath caught. Pretending what? That I don't see. You, he said simply. His voice was raw, stripped of any pretense. That I don't notice the way you smile when you're trying to cover sadness. That I don't notice how lonely you are. The words struck deeper than I expected, because they were true. My husband and I had been living parallel lives for so long, sharing a house but not a connection. I had buried that loneliness under routines, chores, and forced smiles. But Daniel, he had peeled back the layers in seconds, and the truth lay bare. I stood abruptly, needing distance, but he followed, his steps quiet, measured. I'm not trying to ruin anything, he said. But don't ask me to lie to myself anymore. Don't ask me to sit here and act like I don't feel something when I'm with you. My heart was pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. I turned, ready to tell him to stop, to leave, but when I met his eyes, the words died. Because in that moment I saw it. Not lust, not recklessness, but something deeper, longing, and it scared me more than anything. I managed to whisper, "You should go." For a moment he didn't move, his jaw clenched, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. Then slowly, he nodded. Yeah, you're right. He walked to the door, toolbox in hand, but before leaving he turned back. His eyes softened, and his voice was low, almost a confession. You don't have to say anything. Just know that if you ever need someone to really see you, I'm here. And then he left. The door clicked shut behind him. But the weight of his words lingered, pressing into me like a storm cloud I couldn't escape. That night, when my husband came home, he noticed the faucet was fixed. Oh, Daniel came by, huh? He said casually, loosening his tie, not even looking at me. Good guy, always dependable. Yeah, I whispered, forcing a smile. Dependable. But inside, my heart was still racing, not from the repair, not from the silence of my husband, but from what Daniel had done. Because he hadn't just fixed a leak. He had cracked open a part of me I had long forgotten existed. And no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I couldn't unfeel it. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain as people trickled out of the hotel where the corporate dinner had just ended. The evening had been long hours of formal speeches, polite laughter, and clinking glasses. I was exhausted, but also restless, the kind of restlessness that comes when you're surrounded by so many people, yet feel entirely alone. My husband, Daniel, had left earlier in the evening. He'd excused himself with a half-smile, whispering to me that he had an urgent call to take and would meet me at home. I didn't think much of it at the time. Daniel often had late calls or sudden work demands. But as I stood at the entrance, clutching my shawl tighter against my shoulders, I realized I didn't have a ride home. That's when I heard his voice. Deep, smooth, and commanding. "Need a ride?" I turned, and there he was, Mr. Carter, my husband's boss. The man who ran the company with an iron hand, but spoke with the ease of someone who always knew he was in control. His presence was impossible to ignore. Tall, impeccably dressed, his dark suit tailored perfectly, his silver watch catching the glow of the streetlight. For a moment I hesitated. Accepting a ride from him felt unusual. He wasn't just any man. He was Daniel's boss, someone I'd only interacted with in professional settings. Still, refusing felt rude, and the night was growing colder. "If it's not too much trouble," I said softly. He smiled, that charming, knowing smile that always seemed to hide more than it revealed. "No trouble at all. My car's just over here." His car was sleek, black, and polished, the kind of luxury vehicle that hummed with quiet power. He opened the passenger door for me, his hand brushing against mine for just a second so brief I might have imagined it, yet long enough to make my pulse quicken. I slipped inside, inhaling the subtle scent of leather and something distinctly masculine, his cologne, rich and warm as he slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. I found myself unusually aware of how close we were in the confined space. The world outside seemed distant, muted by the soft purr of the car. For the first few minutes, the ride was filled with polite silence, broken only by the sound of tires on the wet road. I stared out of the window, watching city lights blur into streaks of gold. Then his voice broke through. "You looked distracted tonight." I turned my head, surprised. "Distracted?" He glanced at me briefly, one hand steady on the wheel. "Yes, everyone else seemed engrossed in the speeches, the toasts, the networking. But you looked like your mind was somewhere else." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. He had noticed me. Out of everyone in that crowded hall, he had been watching me. "I suppose I was tired," I replied quickly, forcing a small laugh. "These events can be overwhelming." "True," he said, his tone thoughtful. "But I have a feeling it was more than that." There it was again, that piercing perception, as if he could see through layers I kept hidden even from myself. The car turned onto a quieter street, and suddenly the atmosphere felt heavier, more intimate. I adjusted my shawl nervously. "Daniel left early," he continued casually, but there was something sharp beneath his words. "That must happen often." I stiffened. It wasn't exactly a secret that my husband was often busy, but the way Mr. Carter said, it made it sound like something else. A statement, an observation that carried weight. "Yes," I admitted slowly. "Work keeps him busy." "Work," he repeated, almost to himself. His lips curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. Interesting word, isn't it? Covers so many things. I frowned slightly, unsure what he meant. Before I could ask, he shifted the conversation, his voice softening. "Tell me, do you ever get tired of it? The meetings, the waiting, the late nights?" His question struck deeper than I expected. Tired? Of course I was tired. I often felt like my marriage had become a cycle of waiting for him to come home, waiting for him to notice me, waiting for things to feel like they once did. But admitting that to my husband's boss felt dangerous. "I suppose everyone gets tired sometimes," I said carefully. He chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "You're careful with your words." "I like that, but I can tell you're holding Back. The silence stretched again, but this time it was charged, thick with unspoken things. I could feel his eyes flicking toward me when the traffic lights turned red, lingering just a second too long. And I couldn't deny it, my heart was beating faster. When we finally pulled onto the long road leading to my neighborhood, I almost sighed with relief. The ride had felt longer than it was, stretched by the tension that filled the air. But just as I thought the conversation was over, he spoke again. You know, not everyone notices the little things. But I do. I turned, confused. What do you mean? His gaze stayed on the road, but his voice was steady, deliberate. The way you sit quietly at these events, the way your eyes wander, the way you smile politely, but your smile never quite reaches your eyes. You think no one sees it, but I do. My breath caught in my throat. In that moment, I wasn't sure what shocked me more, the fact that he had been watching me so closely, or the fact that he was right.